Welcome to the big issue as we continue our conversation on the opposition within the NDC by itself in Parliament. We have the parliamentary leadership fighting against the party's leadership at the national level. It looks like one way or the other, compromise or consensus must be reached, but we're trying to simply just analyze and see what happens with the party. I've been doing this conversation so far with Dr. Rashid Rahman, Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, Franklin Cudjoe, President, Imani Africa, Dr. Ali Seidu, Political Scientist. We'll also be joined by the Honorable Cletus Avoka, a former majority leader in Parliament. And I'm also in studio with Mr. Alexander Aban, former Member of Parliament for Gomoa West, now happily enjoying his hiatus as a free man. But you've operated within the parliamentary system, and of course, listening to Dr. Draman and Dr. Seidu in particular on finding that balance between independent thought and what you should do for your grassroots and what you believe in and what the party believes in. How difficult is that for you as a parliamentarian? I know it's a battle you have fought on a personal level for some time.
Thank you very much. Good morning to cherished viewers. Good morning to my daughter, Adjoa. She celebrated her 14th birthday.
It's interesting. Every time
yesterday.
Adjoa celebrates her birthday, you're on the show.
I'm here.
Happy birthday to Adjoa.
Yes. Goffert, what we have to know, I mean, the one of the panelists, I think Dr. I've forgotten the name, he was talking about expectations and reality, right? Expectations, yes, because some people fought for your cause. And usually those people are your political grassroots. But what we have to realize is that as soon as you are elected, even though you were sponsored by a certain political party, you are representing a constituency, which is a hotspot of your own party supporters, those who do not support you, okay, and others who may not be even politically aligned. What you're looking for is collectively their welfare. So you have that challenge. So immediately, even at that level, you have the interests of your political party people. And even for those party people, you still have segregation of very close interest people and others.
Then, hold on for me, Mr. Aban. Apologies, but your good friend, Mr. Avoka, has joined
us.
That's
fine.
So finally, so let me hear.
Let him have his bite. I'm here.
Yes, you are here. Honorable Avoka, good morning, and welcome to the big issue.
Good morning, City FM.
Honorable Avoka, good morning.
Good morning, please.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us on the big issue. I know it was on short notice.
You're welcome.
Yes. Now, what do you make of this particular, one would say, dispute between party leadership and parliamentary leadership? Is there even one would say? From the outside, that is what it looks like. You are on the inside. Is there one?
It's not so much of conflict between party leadership and then the NDC caucus in Parliament. I do not think that one man in the party, one official in the party was talking on the position of the party per se, particularly following the approval of the ministers. I think that so far we have been acting in tandem, the caucus in Parliament and the national executive of the party. We've had a series of meetings, and I think that we are now on accord. So yes, at the beginning, there was communication gap. There was a communication gap between the caucus and the party leadership. And that might have accounted for some of these public statements that some officials might have made. But I think that if there was no communication gap, there wouldn't have been a problem. Certainly, we are members of Parliament. We know that we owe allegiance to the party. The party is supreme. Nobody in Parliament or outside Parliament is higher or bigger than the party. We will come and go, the party will remain. So we are committed to respecting the views and the interests of the party and, for that matter, the country. So at the end of the day, what the problem is that if a party has a position, they should normally let their caucus know ahead of time that this is a party position. This is the way the party is thinking. If that doesn't happen and members start thinking on their own, that is where the challenge comes in. So I think that what happened was a communication disconnect between the party leadership outside parliament and the party leadership in caucus, in the caucus and members. But we have been able to iron out issues, and now we are resolved to work together for victory in 2024.
That is interesting to hear. So you are basically even giving us an update that there is peace at home now.
Yes. I'm definitely giving you an update, and then anybody who is informed or involved the activities of the party for the past 1 week will state the same position. The caucus met the National Executive and the Council of Elders a day after we had broken. We went on break on the 30th of March, and the following day, 31st in the morning, we met as a caucus together with the Council of Elders and National Executive. And this was the roadmap that we had drawn for ourselves. That the past is gone. We must now work as a team. We must create a level playing field. We must have constant communication and contact with each other and consultation. And for that matter, what has passed is past. We should now work in the interest of the party and then Ghana for that matter. And then strive hard to that if the MPs go on break, they should be able to organize their constituents. They should be able to engage them and let them understand the issues. And then know that 2024 is our target.
Now, in doing this, was there an understanding that the party's wishes hold sway in these matters? Because most of the time, these wishes are linked to a larger strategy that the party is looking to employ. So are you then telling us now that the NDC members of the Parliamentary Caucus now understand that whatever position that they have, whether independent or not, has to be at least debated or communicated to the party, and then one platform is taken, one decision is made, and that is what will be implemented by parliamentarians? Is that where we are now?
Yes, exactly so. Don't forget that by the processes in Parliament, the conventions, we have, if a party position is put forward to the MPs, we have the first line, second line, third line. The third line is not the highest. And that one tells you that no matter what the individual thinks about, or what interest he has, or what idiosyncrasies and objections that he has, he must go the party line. That is a third line. The second line, yes, it's a more moderate one. And that one, you said, yeah, this is a party position. To the best of your ability, try to follow that one. But as for the first line, they allow you to talk your mind. You can vote the way you want. And then the party is not too keen about the result of that issue in Parliament. So depending on the type of which they employ, then the decision will follow the suit. You will recall that when it came to the election of the Speaker on the state at 7th of January, we were very unanimous, very committed.
Honorable Avoka, the line has gone a bit bad. Can you reposition yourself? Honorable Avoka. Honorable Avoka. Well, it looks like we'll try and fix the line and get back to Honorable Avoka. But we have an update on the situation from what he's telling us. He's a senior member of NDC in Parliament, at least now that he's returned, former majority leader. He says peace and consensus has been reached, and so they have, pledged to work together going forward. That's interesting. But you were explaining this whole looking at your own interest and looking at party interest situation?
Let us be thankful to God. I was saying that in that same person or in that same personality of the MP, he needs to satisfy a lot of interest groups. Sometimes our supporters, especially party supporters, think that for as long as they have toiled to get you elected, what they say is what must be done. Or their expectations on national issues is what you must do. That's one. They always forget that once you are elected, you are representing a constituency. And that constituency is made up of the very people who supported you. Sometimes they may even be in the minority, depending on how many people contested. Because as far as parliamentary elections are concerned, it is first past the post. So you could even
let me just wrap up. Again, right. Apologies.
No problem. I'm here.
And then we can go. Honorable Avoka, please, you are making a point.
Yes. All right. Okay, I'm home.
Yeah, please go on. You are making a point, sir.
Yes, I don't know where the disconnect was, but I was trying to state that we have a convention in Parliament or a practice in Parliament where if it is a strong party position, then the leadership of the caucus in Parliament will employ other first, second, or third line whips. And then when they do that, then the MPs know that they have to take one common decision, irrespective of their personal interest or position. And I liken that, I drew your attention to the election of the speaker, where we were committed to one position, both party and then the caucus, they were both committed to one position. And then we had to stay awake until daybreak, and nobody winked an eye, and etc. I'm saying that with regard to the approval of ministers, we didn't have the same green light from the party. If it came quite late. So, I mean, people thought that the party was not too keen about rejecting somebody or not rejecting somebody and the rest of them. It may be possible that the party and the caucus leaders might have been thinking together, but the caucus as a whole, that we, the members who are not part of the 5 leaders of the minority caucus, might not have been adequately put in the picture. So that's why I said that there was a communication gap, and that is why we had those results. If there was no communication gap, we would have been thinking together, would have been voting together. But let me also state that there's a difference between the election of a speaker and then the approval of ministers. Yes, in the first place, the speaker is the number 3 gentleman or gentleperson in the country in terms of protocol arrangements. Ministers are not. Secondly, with the election of the speaker, it was virtual NDC versus MPP. So once you are an NDC MP, you fell in line to support your party and that interest. But when you come to the approval of ministers, it is MPP against MPP, in the sense that if we reject a minister that like Hawa Kumsin or Akoto or Opong Nkrumah, if you even rejected them, Nana Addo, who is the president, His Excellency the president, will still have the opportunity to appoint or nominate some other MPP members. There will be no way he will come and say, okay, now that you have rejected my persons, then I'll go to the NDC side and then nominate ministers so that we will say we will benefit. No. And there's no guarantee that if you reject this fellow, they will bring a better fellow who will be more acceptable to you. You could be worse off. And then secondly or thirdly, there are other personal considerations. In the case of the approval of ministers, you may be hailing from the same region with a nominated minister. The sympathies are there. You may be hailing from the same ethnic group with a particular minister. The sympathies are there. You may belong to the same religious group with a nominated minister. So the interest is there. Or you may have a direct personal relationship with the minister, and that consideration is there. So these are all factors that have to be taken into account. So unless the MPs are forewarned that notwithstanding your interest or where you come from, etc., this is a party position and you have to do that. And they would have done so. This is not the first time. Let me give you some previous examples. Mm-hmm. In the case of Peter Ala Ajete, who was going as a second-term Speaker of Parliament, as against Seche Hughes. The MPP were divided initially. The GAM MPs said that, I mean, minority side, the NDC was on the minority side. Parliament was convened where the conviction was that Peter Lajite is a very good speaker. He wanted to assert the independence of Parliament and everyone should support him. That was the first understanding. The second understanding was that the GAM MPs, Accra MP said that, look, he is one of them and he had done well. So as far as they are concerned, they will vote for him. But when the battle line were completely drawn, MPP had to whip their MPs, including the Accra MPs, to vote for Mr. Seche Hughes and leave Peter Lajite. They had to use their third line whip to the extent that even though they said the voting was in secret, they didn't, it wasn't a secret ballot. They said that if you take Peter, if you take somebody, show it to the fellow sitting by your left and your right so they'll know whom you have voted for. You will recall that on the 6th night, that is what they were going to do, and we had to abort it. We are going to vote and then show the manner they have voted to their colleague to be sure that they have voted for Professor Mike Okoye, and we aborted that one. So that is where it reaches, the stage where it reaches, that they sacrifice the democratic principles, they sacrifice everything for the sake of the party or the group interest. This is what they had done, and Peter Lajite did not benefit from the Accra or GAM votes and only benefited from the minority side and definitely did not win, even though everybody agreed that he was one of the best speakers that we had. So in the case of the approval of ministers, the dynamics, the chemistry is different. But if there was a communication, the proper communication and link between the caucus and then the party leadership outside Parliament, I think that the result might have been different. Nobody would have complained. Yes, we would have still lost the votes in the sense that we could have all been present and voted 137. If the MPP were also all present and voted 138, would have still been lost. Maybe our foot soldiers and party people outside are of the opinion that because a few of us did not vote that way, and therefore they won, that is why they are peeved. But if we had all voted, all the NDC people, that they were 126 in Parliament, there were others who had traveled for funerals, there were others who were sick on sick bed and they couldn't come to vote. But 126 of us were present. If we had voted 126 against the ministers in question, maybe they would have been complaining too much because they knew that was our strength. But because 10, 15 of us went to vote in one way or the other outside the decision of at the end of the party, that is why this hullabaloo is there. But I'm saying that the challenge was that there was a communication gap. The MPs did not have a green light of the party position early enough to form an opinion before they voted. And that is why they voted that way, particularly with regard to the idiosyncrasies, the various interest associations that I have mentioned earlier.
Okay, now finally, before
let me confirm that we are now resolved. We have confidence in the leadership of Haruna Iddrisu, Muntaka, and then the others in Parliament. And let me state this: that look, in the 7th Parliament, there were 106 MPs, NDC MPs, as against 169. But because of the hard work, the industry, the integrity and commitment of the 106 members of Parliament for the 4 years, that is why Ghanaians thought that 2020, let's give an NDC a larger number of MPs so that they can bring democracy to bear, they can bring balance to bear. And as a result of their hard work, then we were able to get 137. From 106 to 137 is a great achievement. And we should pat that leadership at the back for that achievement. And then what happened during the speakership thing, we should pat them and for several other things that they have done. Yes, there could have been a misjudgment in one way or the other, but that is not enough to change a winning team.
In trying to resolve this issue, as you just informed us, did the Honorable Adonko and Honorable Ablakwa situation also arise?
Yes.
And what is the position?
Well, for Honorable Adongo's intervention, I don't see anything wrong. You can say that personally, I don't think that the caucus should have done A or B or C. Everybody has his or personal position. That one, I don't fault him. That one is okay. With regard to Honorable Ablakwa's resignation, I find that very, very unfortunate. Honorable Ablakwa is very affable, one of the resourceful MPs that we've had. and for the past 4 years, last 7 parliament and then this parliament. Very, very resourceful, full of integrity, full of knowledge, full of ideas, and very abrasive as far as NDC matters are concerned. I think that there should have been more circumspection on his part and on the part of leadership. If we had someone I've got to know earlier, that is how he was thinking, we might have spoken to him and talked him out of the decision that he took. It's not the best is not to resign and leave the boat so that the boat can sink because you are still in the boat. The best thing is to stay within and then see how you can bring transformation or change so that the boat can stay to the shore rather than resign. So I find that very unfortunate, and I think that it's not too late. People can change their minds. We used to say that the only people who cannot change their minds are madmen, but they change their minds. You will see that a madman is walking straight this way. Suddenly he turns right or he turns left to walk. That time he has changed his mind. So I'm confident that with time, on hindsight, maybe Honorable Ablakwa will rescind his resignation and come back to join the appointments committee. In any case, even there is normally a reshuffle of appointment committees. Committees of parliament. You can serve, and then after 1 year or 2 year, leadership can decide to withdraw you and whatnot. If he had beat his time, maybe at a certain point of time, gradually leadership would have said, okay, once you have lost interest in this committee, we can put you in another committee or that type of thing. But the point is that we don't put people in committee for the sake of it. We normally look at your background, we normally look at your style, we normally look at your ability, your profession, and etc. before we put people in the appointments committee. So those who are put in the appointment committee, we know that they are going to handle people. They are going to handle people who have been nominated as ministers, who are very knowledgeable, who are very experienced, and therefore, people who can match that and then do the research and then do the interrogation. And you can see that this 8th Parliament, the vetting in this 8th Parliament has been the most thorough since the 4th Republic started. I have been in Parliament several of these years. I've witnessed some of these vettings. I've been the leader of the House before. But I followed the proceedings out of Parliament, and then I discovered that they were very thorough. They did a good research, and then they were very abreast with current affairs, and they put the ministers to the task. If there was any lapse or something like that, it's human error. But I think that on a whole, Ablakwa and Co did very well, and I will plead with him if along the line that if we get the chance, I'll plead with him that he should rescind his resignation and come back to work together. Our target should be 2024 December elections and nothing else.
And finally, we spoke to, our own Umaru Sanda spoke to the General Secretary of your party, who said, because of the Supreme Court hearings and all the other things, a decision on parliamentary leadership had not yet been reached. So you have also just told us that you've met, leadership of the party, you've had conversations about how to improve the relationship. So going forward. Hello, Honorable Avoka, can you hear me?
Hello, I'm not hearing you again.
Okay,
yeah.
Is it better now?
Hello?
Hello, sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, so I'm saying that our own Umaru Sanda this week interviewed the General Secretary of your party, who said that a decision was yet to be made on whether to reaffirm or reconstitute the leadership of Parliament. Now, you've also told us that you've met leadership at least to find a middle line, and now you found a way to move forward. When Parliament returns, will you be surprised if a different decision is announced?
I will be surprised because it was a very open and frank and healthy meeting. At that meeting, there was no inclination that sooner than later or in the near future, they were going to change or reshuffle the leadership of the House. But notwithstanding that, I think that the party leadership are the leaders of the party. We respect them at all times. And then even though we held that meeting, given if they think that with time they need to reshuffle and rest of it, they will come to the caucus and go ahead and do that. The party is supreme, and therefore we respect the national executive and then the position that they take. But I think that my advice, which was the mood at that meeting, was that we think that the current leadership have done well. There could have been a misjudgment along the line, but this was due to poor communication or poor link, and therefore we should bury the hatchet and then come together and work on 2024.
All right then. Thank you very much, Member of Parliament for Zebila East, the Honorable Cletus Avoka, himself a former majority leader in Parliament, giving us a bit of an update and clarifying a few issues for us. So he says that leadership of Parliament have met with leadership of the party, and it looks like they have smoothed over their differences. We'll still keep an eye on that situation. Back to you, Honorable Aban.
Yes, thank you very much. I was talking about the various interest groups that the person must satisfy. Beyond what is pertaining at your constituency, you also know that your party at the national level expects that you toe the line of the party in certain decisions that the party would want to take, right? Then you as a person, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? How do you want to be seen in your party? How do you want to make yourself relevant? What next step do you want to take? All these things may affect the way you take decisions. And then finally, and which is the most paramount, the country itself. It is just unfortunate. I've listened to, especially Cletus, as he spoke. You realize that the focus is on the next election, not the next generation. So you see that the party's interests, which may be contrary to the general welfare, general interest of Ghana, now holds sway over that of Ghana. And I'm going to explain why.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the approval of ministers, you see these various interest groups stating their positions. Now, let me start with the General Secretary of the NDC. He says that the party at the national level or the central level met with the caucus and took a decision that they should pass the finance minister designate then, right? And their reason for passing him, according to Asiedu Nketia, was that he was messing up, and that the continuing messing up of the finance minister would inure to their political benefit in 2024. That's a shame.
Are you quoting him directly?
Oh yes, I have read him. I read him from. I think he spoke to maybe I can't tell the
news, the media,
the media house, but I have read him, and there was a quote attributed to him, and I'm actually paraphrasing his thoughts. That according to their party, the reason for asking them to pass the finance minister was that in their estimation as a political party, the finance minister was messing up. And so to them, it was a benefit that he would continue messing up so that the economy would be in shambles, and that would be a political message for 2024. So it means that it is not about Ghana. My thinking is that, look, no matter how good you are, a time will come when the people will say, why are you? And so, if any political party is in power, pray that they do well, and that after doing well and bringing the notches a little higher, you can also come and continue from there a little higher. And Ghana will be the benefit for it. Probably we have not put these statements under on the radar enough. But for this to come from the General Secretary of a political party, God save Ghana. So our thinking is that if what he says is what our whole politics is about, then our thinking is that once any political party is in power, let them do badly. So that even though we ourselves are bad, in comparison to them, we would appear better and then we will be voted into power. Is that a thinking? And that is coming from the general secretary of a political party. And in my language, we say, "Okonfubana, Oshankom, de crew Bobban, on us what maybe." That's what he said. And probably they had not communicated this sordid political strategy to their foot soldiers. And that's why they were up in arms. Because if they had gone to their foot soldiers to tell them that, you know what, that man is messing up, so just let us pass him, the foot soldiers would have said, oh, then it's a good political strategy, let's keep quiet. But the foot soldiers, in my estimation, had been fed with all these spurious theories about the finance minister and other names that came up. Because nobody forced the NDC to come out with that release, which indicated to Ghanaians who they were going to reject and for what reasons. So having whipped or having excited their base with the victory that they had in the election of the speaker, they thought they were in motion and that it should go on like that to suit their expectation. And that expectation was seriously dashed. So in the first case of the three ministers designated, that is Opon Kroma, Howard Crimson, and Dr. Akoto Afriyie. I mean, these three were top on the line that for them they were going to deny them. Of course, there were other names that were mentioned.
Well, they mentioned interior, they mentioned health, they mentioned defense, they mentioned fisheries.
Many of them. Now,
in particular.
Yes. Now they go to vote. And then the vote turns out that, oh, all these people have been passed. So immediately the food soldiers feel that, hey, these people have disappointed us because they whip up our excitement that these people are going to be rejected. And because of happenings of yesteryears, where there were speculations and there were, if I say, theories that some people may have been compromised, the food soldiers think that probably that has been played out again. And that is why quickly they mounted all these kind of aggression on the parliamentary, their caucus leadership. But what goes into selecting the leaders? For me, I always sit with admiration when Haruna Iddrisu takes the floor. Take it or leave it. Because he is deep. Parliament's business is to debate issues, come out with all the angles. And he always does that creditably. What more were they expecting from the leadership? That we have put you there not to think for yourself in the national interest, and that you should just always go and rehash things that have been given you at the national level of your party. Then what kind of leadership would that be? Obviously, he must always have some room of discretion to exercise. Now you go to the vetting. The man comes for 2 days. He discharges himself so well, so creditably. From your angle, you say that he is messing up, so let him continue. There's consensus. And then, if you are a member of the appointments committee and you think that you are a lone voice in there and they vote against you, that is part of democracy. That's part of consensus building. So you agree, and that's it. And with all due respect, I was trying to look at the law and see by what, authority, on what basis that he tendered in his resignation. So suppose that he had two committees to serve on, and he resigned. The rule says that you must serve on at least one standing committee and then one select committee, right? So does it mean that he now has only one committee to sit on? What is the effect of that? Because I think that by the rules or the standing orders, select committee is first selected, and then they in turn look at the background of everybody and put them in committees. And so if you feel that you can no longer be in that committee, go to your caucus leadership, have that discussion so that they would, together with the select committee, they can adjust and put you in another committee. Now that he has resigned, where is he going?
But you just also spoke to us about the expression of
independence,
national interest, independence-based thought process. What
yes.
prevents him from
state your case.
Expressing his?
Good. State
But
your
he
case.
did. He says on the basis of principle and conviction. Is that not enough?
That is what I'm saying, that it's about procedure. If you want to leave, nothing prevents you. But is that how it is done? I know every committee is the Speaker's committee. He is setting a precedent. And we are a country of laws. So I'm just trying to see that what is the effect of this? And is it valid? Because
is somebody going to force him to go back and serve on the committee?
No, good. So if you don't want to serve on the committee, probably you go back to the select committee, talk to them so that in reconstituting, they can put you somewhere. Now, what is the other committee that he's going to serve on? Because he must at least serve on two. Now that he has resigned, he is serving on one. That is if he is not serving on three. So that the resignation from this would still leave him at two. Then he will be fine. But the thing is that the Constitution itself, I mean, the standard orders itself says that you must be on one select, one select committee, and then one standing committee. These are the two types of committees that we have. Now, if he is resigning from one, and the select committee has not put him on any other, is he satisfying the standing orders?
Well, we'll wait and see.
So these are all the things that we must look at. I like him. And probably today, let me use just 1 minute to praise him for who he is. You know, when he came to Commonwealth Hall in the year 2000, I was the JCI president. Yes. And this man, just within 3 weeks, when he had not even found his feet, walked straight to my room as the JCI president and told me, I want to be a student leader. Can you teach me how you became JCI president? And I even told him, hey, young man, you have not even gone for matriculation and you are looking for student leadership. He went on and on and on, became NUC's president, and on and on and on and on. So he has stayed the course as far as his ambition to be a leader is concerned. And to that extent, I salute him. I like him for that. He has stayed the course. Okay. But this one, I think he goofed.
On this one?
On this one.
All right, then. Your point is obeyed. Let me just take wrap-up words from my other guests on this so that we end this particular conversation. So, Dr. Rashid Rahman and Dr. Seidu, I'm sure you've heard from Honorable Avoka. I guess that puts the issue to rest. He says peace has been found. Dr. Rahman first.
Yes. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Go ahead, sir.
I was saying that it's good to hear from Honorable Avoka that peace is made within the ranks of the NDC, because we need a united opposition to hold the government to account. But I just wanted to make this final comment that, look, hearing from him and all the things going on within the NDC, the foot soldiers and the NDC leadership in the party must be very, very careful. Otherwise, their strategy is going to come back to haunt them. I think that on December 7 last year, Ghanaians rejected the kind of politics where we have, the majority always having its way. The thinking, I believe, was that we thought that, whether the party did wrong or not, they used their numbers to the advantage of the party and to their own advantage in Parliament. And that is why perhaps we saw the outcome that we saw on December 7. If the NDC thinks that they can remote control their members to toe the party line, I believe that Ghanaians are not going to be excited about this. And this strategy might come back to haunt them. So they would have to be very careful in terms of making sure that there is a balance between what the national interest calls on them to do in Parliament and what the party interest calls on them to do.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Dr. Rashid Draman. Dr. Alidu Seidu, your final words on this?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo what my senior colleague has said. I think it's very interesting to hear that efforts have been made to close the rank of the NDC caucus in Parliament, because it is a very serious business in governance. Have a very strong opposition to be able to check, especially given the type of overbearing democratic power that we have in our current democratic dispensation. We need a very strong, independent-minded MPs to be able to keep government in check, so that we'll be able to have the kind of leadership that we require. And what the NDC should realize is that Ghanaian voters voted for them, especially the parliamentary majority, in order to help us achieve the needed reforms that Parliament needed to work with. If they toy with this in the name of extreme partisan interests, it may endanger the love and the support that they had won from independent-minded Ghanaians and very moderate party supporters who voted for them in 2016. So a lot of care has to be taken to be able to manage party interests and then the interest of a very active support base, and then keeping the leadership together in Parliament. Changing the leadership will not change anything. And I bet you that will even create more chaos than what they had anticipated. So moving forward, I think they will need to give them the support, but also consider the generality of the very moderate NDC supporters and people who are not NDC people at all, but who bought into their very good campaign message in the last year's election, so that they will be able to come back stronger in 2024.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Dr. Seidu. And let me just take a couple of messages that have come through on this. Good morning, Godfred. Listening to General Seidu Nketia during the week, the decisions made by the leadership is something that the party truly endorsed. So if the grassroots is still angry with the parliamentary leadership, then same energy should be channeled towards the party leadership. The party believes it won the election, and I believe that a winning team should not be changed. Walanyo Nakatia says Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa should be forced to resign from Parliament, not to do praise me only attitude to appease some of the NDC foot soldiers for his political interest, and also to foment trouble for the rest of NDC members serving on the appointments committee. Joe from Tema says, in African politics, when your opponents begin to praise you, check yourself. Oh, come on, Joe. All right, then. Walanyo from Akwetia, well, I've read your messages. Kweku from La Paz says that I totally disagree with Honorable Avoka. Another MPP finance minister would have been better than Mr. Oforiatta, who has destroyed our economy. Paul from Ashali Butchie says, I heard General Mosquito say they'll go by the old practice of reconstituting party leadership in Parliament after each election. It could be the same members or not. Thank you, Paul for your message. And yeah, Prince Henry from Koforidua, I have read your messages. So this is where we'll end this conversation on the NDC. And it looks, like I said, the big updates for, well, according to Honorable Cletus Avoka, meeting was held between parliamentary leadership and national leadership of the NDC. And it looks like some consensus has been reached on how they can work together and improve their communication lines going forward. So we'll also be keeping a close eye on that. Now, when we return, we will delve into the energy sector. Some say Dumso, some say Preso. Well, all kinds of names are coming up. We'll try and figure out what is happening in the energy sector. The big issue returns. Welcome back to the big issue, and this time we're going to have the conversation about energy. And for those of you who also want your messages to be read, 0549986996, 0549986996, 0550585832. So there's been significant conversation about whether we are in the throes of another energy problem. The government has gone out of its way to reassure the general public, not just the governments, the energy companies, that look, no, things are not what they used to be. This is not what you experienced previously. This is something else, so you do not have to worry. But of course, you cannot fault people for asking the questions because the power is still unstable. So they need to find some kind of solution. So we're trying to figure that out in the second part of the show. So we've had the Energy Minister, Dr. Matthew Poku Prempeh, and other power producing companies addressing the media on the recent outages. So we'll hear that when we return. My next group of panelists will break down what the true issues are.
Frequent power outages, which many believe is an indication of a return to the dark days of Dumso. Periodic power cuts have been rampant in many parts of the country, and these have left some consumers fuming due to its negative impact on their lives and businesses. In a media engagement on Thursday, Minister of Energy Dr. Matthew Poku Prempeh asked for calm and assured Ghanaians these outages would soon be over, as government was working to resolve them.
I think one fact we can all attest to is that the power has not been as consistently on as we all expect. Some have labeled it a return of Dumso. Some have called it Dundum and whatever. What is happening is not as a result of a generational problem or fuel shortage, but really some technical difficulties and challenges one or two institutions might be going through. So without much ado, even though GRIDCO has been consistently coming out with press releases and press statements as to the cause of every power outage, we want them to take the opportunity of not only informing Ghanaians, of also reassuring us that what we are experiencing in a short time will be a thing of the past.
CEO of the Ghana Grid Company, Jonathan Amwakumba, on his part said the free electricity offered by the president also contributed to the problem.
It means that if people are getting it free, they will consume more. So that is why the demand has gone up to 3,171. But when demand goes up, what happens is that you need to transport the electricity to where it is being demanded. And it passes through the wires, and sometimes the wires get congested, as he spoke about in the Kumasi case, and you would need to drop some of the load in order for the required amount to be able to go through.
Director of Operations of GRIDCO, Mark Barr, explained that a blackout had become unavoidable since they would allow contractors work on substations in a bid to improve power supply in the country.
The contractors have asked for outages between now and July in order to complete the projects. We are talking of 330,000 votes. In our house, we have only 240 votes, and that can even kill. So they will be coming to us to request these outages. And when this happens, we grant them this outage. It means that some of us will have to go off. We are now working with ECG on the quantum of these outages and how long it will take. And we are also discussing with the contractor to, as much as possible, minimize the duration so that we will have the minimum impact of outages on customers.
He further stated that the Ameri power plant would be moved to Kumasi as a temporary solution.
Okay, so that is the update of what has been happening in the energy sector the course of the week. You can also keep your messages coming. People are not too happy with the power outage situation, and some are saying, look, if it is doomsday, call it doomsday. If it is not, then tell us what it is. But we'll try and figure that out. And to help me do that is Dr. Kwabena Donkor, himself a former power minister. Also joining us is Kojo Yaoche, who is the policy lead, petroleum and conventional energy at ASEP. And then Franklin Cudjoe, president of Imani Africa, is still with us for this part of the show. So I guess I'll start the conversation from Dr. Kwabena Donkor, former power minister. Dr. Donkor, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you for making time for us on the big issue this morning. I guess my first question then will be, we had the energy minister clearly. He says this is not doomsday. This is just inconsistent energy supply based on transmission problems that they are trying to fix. Should we believe him?
Yes, we should believe him. We should believe him for two reasons. One, the government says we have excess capacity. And if we have excess capacity, which I don't accept, but assuming we have excess capacity, it means we don't have any generation problem. And therefore, it cannot be load shedding arising out of inadequate generation. But he also said we have transmission problems. And for me, that is the reality. The reality is that this country, driven by populism, took a decision in the first quarter 2018 to reduce tariffs, which impacted very negatively on GRIDCO and ECG. In 2018, first quarter 2018, when the tariffs were reduced ostensibly in fulfillment of a campaign promise, GRIDCO came to the Parliamentary Select Committee on Mines and Energy, and when we interrogated them, they said, look, they were going to, first of all, suspend some critical maintenance, and secondly, they could not undertake some capital projects they were in the process of undertaking because of the reduced cash flow. Not only that, the French Agency for International Development was then working with GRIDCO on some expansion. The French government, the French agency pulled the plug because GRIDCO's cash flow could not support GRIDCO's commitment to that project. And therefore, today, we are reaping what we sowed in 2018. GRIDCO had to postpone critical maintenance, and it's come back to hit us. The Kumasi-Kintampo transmission would have been completed, ought to have been completed. It was postponed for inadequate cash flow. The loop, the central loop, 330 from Prestia, etc., to Kumasi was also postponed. So we are reaping what we sowed in 2018. Unfortunately, we, as a country, we are continuously driven by short-term populism, aligned to electoral cycles, rather than looking at things in a sustainable national interest. And this is why we also had a second problem. The other problem was that a compressor at Sankofa went off, and therefore gas supply from Sankofa ceased. Ordinarily, we should not have had a problem because we consciously brought in the AXA plant using heavy fuel oil. So we could have switched to heavy fuel oil. We also have plants that are dual fuel and they could use light crude. But we didn't have treated light crude, neither did we have heavy fuel oil. And in energy security, you also need to diversify your source of fuel. And we are putting all our eggs in one basket, and this is the consequence.
Thank you for that very, very quick explanation. And I'll come back to you. Let me just hear quickly from Mr. Yao Che as well. Do you agree with Dr. Kwabena Donkor's position on this matter, that the 2018 tariffs are largely responsible for this, the reduction in tariffs?
Yeah, to a large extent. It is one part of the problem that they are facing. The problem is on two fronts. Yes, our tariffs are not
we seem to have lost Mr. Yao Che from ISEP. We'll try and get back to him. But Franklin, let me get your thoughts on the position that has been espoused by Dr. Kwabena Donkor.
Well, Dr. Donkor and Yao Che are more knowledgeable in this subject than myself. You see, I'm an ordinary citizen who needs power. I understand that when this whole idea of ESLA was put in place, there was supposed to be some idea called the cash waterfall mechanism, such that some of the proceeds from ESLA would definitely go to struggling agencies that deal with power. Unfortunately, the government keeps treating itself and treating everybody like sons and daughters of Captain Planet, and then tends to spend as much as they can on subsidies that are very costly, as we can see now, and has no real clue as to how to redeem those uneconomic subsidies. The painful part of it is that when the subsidies have been expended, those who are supposed to enjoy the subsidies are not that many. If you notice, the Ghana Statistical Service suggested that about 25% of persons that were supposed to be enjoying free electricity, a la the subsidies, apparently couldn't get it. But that's not my worry. I think the clear indications here, whatever government does, whether there's excess capacity, whether the infrastructure, the grid has to be worked on. We know these are dated issues, and I think we need to get on with them. But we've been told that the books are not so clean in terms of how much government owes some of these power and energy agencies as well. So it's a conundrum that shouldn't be a conundrum, which could be fixed. I don't understand. 3 years ago, around the same time, there was this same issue about Dumsor, Pre-Sor, whatever it is. I just found out on my timeline, Facebook timeline. And when I hear the GRIDCO boss say, oh, wait, there's no problem. It's just that the lines are overworked and that the lines are overloaded. Mm-hmm. The ECG boss in Kumasi is asked, so what do we do? He says, well, the lines are overloaded. Then they said, give us a timetable so that we can manage. As we speak, I don't have lights. I'm using alternate power. You have no clue, you have no idea as to when the lights will go on and come off. So it's true we are not in the years of Dumsor, but there's clearly something that is not right. It's the consistency with which these things happening and the consistency with which our leaders evade answers and evade the real solution. So I'm not entirely surprised this is happening.
I'll get back to Yao Che in a bit, but let me go back to Dr. Kwabena Donkor. Now, Dr. Donkor, you talk about populism and the tariff reduction from the first quarter 2018 affecting the finances, but we've also heard the GRIDCO boss say money is not really an issue.
If the GRIDCO board chairman says, or chief executive says, money is not an issue, he's being very economical with the truth. GRIDCO came to Parliament in 2018, met the Committee of Mines and Energy, of which I am a member, and stated categorically the impact on the tariff reduction on the operations of GRIDCO. GRIDCO lost over 200 million cedis in that year. And since then, tariffs have not been effectively adjusted. We should always take into account the fact that 70 to 80% of all the payables of the power sector are dollar denominated. The receivables, over 90% of the receivables are cedi denominated. And therefore, ordinarily, a deterioration in exchange rate already impacts negatively on the power sector. If you add a tariff reduction, the PURC under political pressure exercised, then we have a dangerous cocktail. GRIDCO was categorical in 2018 that they will have to suspend critical maintenance. They were also categorical that because their books had deteriorated, their operations with the French Agency for International Development would have to come to a standstill. And indeed, the French pulled the plug. And therefore, let no one deceive us. People might want to cover up cracks, but we have deep cracks. The deep cracks are that we cannot play partisan politics with power.
Now, we talk. We've also heard the GRIDCO boss mention that, look, between now and August, we are trying to fix these transmission problems we've had. So we are putting up the Pukwase Kaswa substation, which is currently under construction according to GRIDCO. There's some work ongoing in Kumasi. So just give us between now and August, and these problems will go away. Is that not a reasonable time frame to look at? Is that not a reasonable explanation?
These were wasted 2018 and 2020. And therefore, I mean, coming in the third or fourth quarter 2021 is no excuse. It's no excuse. And it's not only GRIDCO. ECG also suffered the same hemorrhage of resources, of funds, of cash flow. And therefore, ECG is also unable to service its transmission infrastructure the way the infrastructure ought to be serviced. Let's recognize that we are already starting from a deficit. There is also growing demand, growing population, new settlements coming in. And in that situation, when you have a tariff reduction, when you have a reduction in your cash flow, there are two options. The shareholder must inject new capital. The government of Ghana, be the sole shareholder, is unable to do that. And so we have a deficit in funding. Then again, your colleague also mentioned the transfer of the AmeriPlans plans from Takoradi to Kumasi to temporarily solve the Kumasi problem. Look, currently, Kumasi is still on 161. KV lines. Those lines are heavily overloaded. Kumasi ought to be on the 330 now, but for the delay. And therefore, if we bring the AmeriPlans, even if we take 6 units, which will be 100 megawatts to Kumasi, it will temporarily boost generation in Kumasi and help stabilize the lines in the Kumasi area. But that is also a short-term solution. The long-term solution is to improve our transmission assets, move a lot more from 161 to 330, and then upgrade our stations, upgrade our substations to take to take on the increased load coming from the Kumasi area. We are lagging behind because of populism. We are lagging behind because governments want to please the public. Unfortunately, governments don't put the whole issues out succinctly to the public. So the public is not in a position to actually appreciate. So if you go to an election and say, if I come, I'll reduce tariff, the popular opinion will be that, oh, this government will reduce tariff. But there is a cost to reduction in tariff. And that is the cost we are paying now. So it is high time we move away from this short-term populism. And also move away from development based on election cycles, 4-year election cycles. They don't help us. We just postpone the inevitable. Of course, the gas situation at Sankofa fields should also be addressed. We need to expand Ghana Gas, the capacity to process. There is currently capacity at 10 and Jubilee fields. We could have increased production from there if we had the processing capacity. That we don't also have. We keep on postponing investments that we ought to be making, and that doesn't augur well for the future.
It then looks like this conversation should be one that should heavily involve the finance ministry then, because listening to you, everything boils down to money, taxation, tariffs, but we barely hear the finance ministry mentioned in these conversations. Should we be dragging them into this conversation?
In fact, a former energy minister, now Professor Joe Otiaji, once said we didn't have an energy problem in Ghana, we had a finance problem. We are developing economy, we are an expanding economy. For example, if VALCO was fully operational, we will be needing another 75 times 4 or 75 times 3 megawatts just. And so in the absence of VALCO, people say we have excess capacity, but really do we? We have a finance problem, but ESLA was put in partly to pay legacy debts, but ESLA, is not being used for the purpose. A part of ESLA was used to pay pensions. As a people, we just lack discipline. As a people, and especially here, I will blame the media. Our media does not monitor, does not police, does not set the agenda. The media behaves just like the rest of the populace. Rather than setting the agenda, rather than being critical, have we looked at the use to which ESLA funds have been put vis-a-vis the act setting up ESLA? No. When we were bringing Ameri, one of the justifications was that Ameri was modular, and therefore in an emergency we can move Ameri plant around. Today that is exactly what the government intends doing, and yet there was all the hue and cry about Ameri. As a people, we are too superficial in our analysis. We scratch the surface and we do things superficially. But the longer medium term will not wait for us. They will catch up with us.
Interesting thoughts there. I think we have Yao Che back. Yao, you're making a point.
Yeah, I was trying to say that I agree with Dr. Donkor that our tariffs are not cost reflective enough. And that is one of the problems that is burdening the sector financially. At the other end also is that the tariffs that we have, we are also not being able to collect enough to feed into the value chain. So yes, the tariffs are low, but what we are even collecting, we are unable to collect. So we have a three-pronged problem. We have financial problem, which is down to the cash flow issues in the sector. Then we have the technical problems that has to do with the transmission system, which is also as a result of the lack of investment, continuous investment, because every year, GRIDCO lists a number of critical projects that has to be invested in to build a more resilient power sector. But we end the year and then we don't do those investments, largely because there is no money to do that. So what you get is that if there is no counterpart funding or there is no external funding, then those high-ticket investments that will build a more robust transmission system, we are not able to invest in them. So it was rather curious that the GRIDCO boss was saying that they have enough money to do their upgrades and revamping their infrastructure.
You're also not buying that we have money?
No. I mean, if you have money, then go ahead and do the investment. It's as simple as that. As of last year, July last year, Gridco, in their own report, indicated that they have number of projects that are ongoing and more that needs to be done. And even the basic ones like capacitor banks, that ensures efficiency in the system to ensure that we minimize the losses that are incurred during transmission, which if we did our own estimation, if we want to revamp all the capacitor banks in the system, that should cost us only 10 million. But every month we are losing $2 million from losses as a result of inefficient capacitor banks. So if Gridco says that they have money, there is enough money in the system, then they should just go ahead and do the investment. So you see, I agree with Dr. Donkor that we need some level of candor in talking about the problems that we are currently facing in the system. And that should start from the tariffs. This year is a major tariff review year. We are expecting that PULC will be allowed to estimate what we should really be paying for the power that we consume. If not, two things are going to happen. Either we pay the full cost of the power we consume, or government would want, like, let me borrow Dr. Donkor's work, want to be populist and want to subsidize how much we should pay for power. The result of that is that we are going to further burden the system because government is obviously not going to pay all those subsidies. And in the first place, where is it even going to get the money? I mean, if you look at the budget, we take out debt servicing, you take out, compensation, we have very little left. So these are some of the germane issues that we should be talking about and not trying to plaster the wound without treating it.
How big a problem, and again, listening to the government, is these so-called excess capacity payments that it says it keeps making, and perhaps that is also taking away much needed funding to Gridco, ECG, and the rest?
I mean, a few weeks ago, we released an advisory paper to government trying to question what estimations go into these excess capacity payments. Because we always hear we are paying excess capacity 40 million, but we don't see the invoices. Which plants are lying idle because there is no demand for them that are generating the excess capacity? There is currently no transparency around that. So we are not able to independently verify that truly, this is how much the government is paying for excess capacity. And what is even more shocking is that instead of trying to find a way to stop the excess capacity payment, government has gone on to impose a tax, a levy, to be able to continue paying the excess capacity. So it means that, in their minds, they are not ready. It's either they are not ready to solve the problem, or they are just not interested in solving the problem.
Look, let me just ask you this for the layman, where you sit. The government says, ECG, Gridco, and I guess I can say the government because the Minister of Energy was there, say this is the time frame we have given ourselves to solve this problem. For where you sit, is that a reasonable time frame?
That timeline is a bit misleading because it's trying to bundling up two different issues that we are currently facing. We appreciate that there are certain projects that are ongoing to bolster the system, build a more resilient transmission infrastructure. But those projects are not completed. They are now given, even some of them are supposed to be completed last year, but they are not completed. So you can't say that those are the reasons why we are having power trips, power outages right now. Right now, the problem that we are having is as a result of the weak transmission infrastructure, overloading. You can be in your house and the lights will keep flickering. Low voltage for the whole day. You will not be able to do anything. Those are not as a result of the developments that are ongoing. And we've had, timelines being given now and again that we are a bit skeptical about whether these ones will be met finally.
Dr. Donkor, I guess I also come back to you with two sets of questions that I asked Yaoche, because it was the government keeps saying we are making these payments, and you would know a lot about these payments because you sat in the room whilst some of the contracts were being drawn for the IPPs. The government says, well, we are paying 500 million to $1 billion in excess capacity payments. This is money that could have gone to...
Let me quickly answer them.
Go on.
First of all, when government says excess capacity charges, as I stated on the floor of Parliament during the policy debate, if you pay Litasco over $100 million, Litasco is a fuel supplier. And yet you box that into excess capacity. If you pay Stratcom, a company formed in 2017, another $100 million for fuel, and you box all of this as excess capacity. As my colleague said earlier on, the government is being disingenuous when it talks about excess capacity. For which plants are you paying excess capacity? And there is a whole myth about this excess capacity. Every serious developing country must have some excess capacity in stock. Our president goes all over the world touting for investment. If people come today to set up a factory, should they come and wait for 3 years for us to set up a new power plant before they invest in the economy? Absolutely not. We need some amount of capacity available, unused capacity, so that any new investment can take that immediately. Again, like I said, we have 3 port lines of VALCO lying idle. Each port line takes 75 megawatts. If VALCO comes on stream today, that will go. We are also largely dependent on hydro. We just need one poor rainy season. And the capacity of Akosombo, Kongo, and Bui will be compromised. Akosombo has an installed capacity of 1,020 megawatts. We are normally generating around 800, 700. One poor rainy season can bring us back to 400, 500. So where is the essence? Let's be candid. Let's have a debate devoid of partisan politicking and pettiness. Let's put all the issues on board. You don't go and pay for fuel and call that excess capacity. If the plant is not operating, will it use the fuel? And in any case, assuming without admitting that we have excess capacity and we sign emergency agreements for 5 years, you go to expand those agreements to 10 years and others to 25 years if we have excess.
Interesting. So for, I guess, the person at home, the big question then is, what do we do? Because the timelines, listening to Yaoche says the timelines are a bit deceptive. Is that also something you agree with?
The projects they are mentioning are projects that ought to have been completed a while ago, but because of cash flow limitations. Let me even tell you what is more worrying, what gives me sleepless nights as a citizen.
Tell me.
Our systems control plants, our systems control office in Tema, operated by Greco. We ought to have had a backup in Kumasi 3 years ago. If that systems control room crashes, the whole country goes out. We don't have a backup. Whilst I was minister, we drew up plans to have a backup in Kumasi. Nothing has been done.
Did you find money for it?
It was at the planning stages when I left the office. Of
Okay.
course, we ought to find money for it. But when we keep on cutting tariffs, where is GRIDCO going to get? We cut tariffs in the face of increasing operational costs. Where is GRIDCO going to get the money? So right now, if that operations room goes down, the whole country is messed up. We don't have a backup operations room. And it is against every industry standard not to have a backup. So we have real problems. And I sympathize with the new minister that he's taking the seat at a time when people were more interested in politicking than doing real technical professional work.
You talk.
And I wish him luck.
You talk about the tariffs. At this point in time, looking at the economic setup and everything, is it a reasonable time to say, you say it's populist, but is this a reasonable time to increase tariffs?
If we had maintained the tariffs the government came to meet at the time, we could have generated the cash flow for the projects that ought to have been completed last year and others in 2019. At the moment, you see, fortunately, the government of Ghana is the sole shareholder of GRIDCO, as well as ECG and NETCO, the other distribution company. If we are not going to get money from tariffs, then there should be capital reinjection. Every businessman knows that. If you are not going to increase your sales and your assets are deteriorating with usage, what do? There's the need for capital reinjection. The state cannot escape. The people of Ghana who own these entities cannot escape. We can bury our heads in the sand, but reality will catch up with us. We can play the politicking that we have played, but the reality will catch up with us. You can't play politics with technical issues. They will catch up with us. Unfortunately, as a country, we are uninterested in real issues. We are too interested in the superficial, the dressing, the surface effect, rather than tackling the real issues. So that is our challenge. The energy sector is in a crisis. And the earlier we admit that, the better. My advice to government would be, look, let's have a technical team devoid of politics. Let's look at what to do for the next 5 years. And let's bring technical people, irrespective of political party, on board from both sides.
Okay, Dr. Donkor, just hold on for me. Let me go to Franklin. Franklin, I'm sure you've heard Yaoche and Dr. Donkor, and you are not feeling very reassured where you sit as the ordinary consumer.
Well, I guess it's been part of the story of our lives, our policy lives. There's a lot of policy logicality all over the place. And so I guess the two gentlemen have defined the problem within the energy sector as populism, pandering to populism rather than doing the real hard work. I mean, Dr. Donkor uses the word, if you don't have the money in order to revive your assets, even from taxes, then you have to look elsewhere, capital reinjection. In any case, the question would have been, who is supposed to pay for that? It appears we are being fed these, should I call it supposed subsidies on the blind side of real policy indiscipline. And that's the problem we have here. I don't think the challenge really is when you tell Ghanaians you are going to pay this X amount for some sustainable amount of power, there's going to be so much uproar. Of course, I can understand there can be politicking because I know Dr. Donkor tried to do that during his term, and then collectively we all came after him. But the challenge is that, look, you can't eat your cake and have it. So let's stop pretending, and the government must stop pretending that they're going to salvage the dwindling fortunes of everybody on the author of the so-called common good. Because the common good is actually paid for. It has to be paid for. There's no free lunch. I guess the challenge and the reasons why we tend not to give the governments the full credit when it comes to these kinds of things, and then they also keep dodging the issue, is because they've not been candid with us. You see, if they were candid with us and said, look, I'm going to give you X amount, but you pay Y amount, and then we can understand one or each other. But to the extent that that hasn't been done, this whole merry-go-round, Jack, where are you type of games you are playing with the energy sector wouldn't help anybody. So I'm not reassured, except, of course, I mean, again, we try to use certain situations to explain our inefficiencies. Weren't we told that quite a number of infrastructure-related, should I call it, maintenance works were being done, and that's the reason why only Kumasi and Accra would have outages. Now, when I hear Dr. Donkor and my good friend Yao Che now espouse the problem, actually explain it in detail as it is, it looks as if we've not moved very far from our initial woes. So let's not postpone the problem. Let's deal with it head on. If it is a matter of money, I was amazed. You know, I refer to the ESLA that was set up. I mean, you could set up ESLA for X, for the purposes of achieving X, and then using it to do other things, not even under emergency. And I'm told, and Doc, you could correct me, that my understanding is that when this ESLA thing was formed, there was supposed to be a formula, but there was also a leeway given, which made the minister or whoever it is in charge of our finances could say, well, look, I could look into this pot of money and then do what I like to do with it, which is why they could use some of the money to pay pension and what have you. I think it's not the best. We could do a lot more, and I think energy is the crucial matter when it comes to trying to rejuvenate the economy. If it were the case that maybe ordinary consumers were being shortchanged in this manner, perhaps we can accommodate it. But when it extends to industry and there's no certainty when industry needs power, it adds to the woes of the ordinary businessman, and then taking his cost of doing business out of gear. I think we need to have a holistic conversation. Haven't we been having it anyway? I mean, I guess Parliament is set up for this purpose, and they must get to work.
But Franklin, I mean, you've been following some of these things for a while. What is the difficulty? And I hear Yao Che say candor. I hear Dr. Donkor say candor. What is the difficulty in there being even an independent system of verifying some of these things? Because energy is not something where documents should be in the hands of just one person, wouldn't you say? So if payments have been made, Parliament should have the same documents as GridCo should have, or ECG should have, or the Energy Ministry should have, so that at least everybody can keep track of these things. But it's quite the scenario where everybody seems to have different numbers for different things.
It's only because the government really has the larger, should I call it, the shareholder in all of these enterprises or these companies that are supposed to produce power. So obviously, given the fact that they would have thought that we were going to come after them, they probably don't want to share the details. But can you imagine for once if it were if the table in the other way around, if the percentage in terms of ownership and then the execution of their mandates were private sector led? Don't tell me PDS was a failure. I mean, the reasons why PDS was a failure was a collective failure on the part of government as well as the Americans. But if there were if we had had a situation where it was the other way around, probably 80% private sector and 20% government, I don't think you'd be hearing these stories. At the end of the day, the efficiency levels would have been much higher. Of course, I'm talking about the clean private sector deal, not chronic capitalist arrangements. So it is the singular reason why we are not hearing much candor, we are not hearing the sincerity. It's simply because governments do not want to tell us the story, the full story. And indeed, like someone said, if government were a product, it would be illegal to sell the product. But the case is illegal. So that's the reason why we have all these challenges, actually. I mean, if you and I were in a proper venture, were allowed to run the system. I mean, I'm saying you and myself, assuming we had the funding, we could run this stuff without any hitch. But the moment you give governments the opportunity, then they tend to waste every opportunity and then pretend they are doing so well. It's unfortunate, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up something, and I want to ask Yaoche about this. Yaoche, Franklin mentions PDS, and I've also seen documentation or some literature that says, look, PDS, even in its West state, was bringing in a lot of money that would have proven useful at a point like this. But since they left, collections have dropped 10%, 20% or so. And so that has also contributed to the problem. Is that something you're aware of from an ASEP perspective?
I mean, we keep hearing those things, but I have not cited any documents. You would expect that. So now we would have some comparative study on how revenue management was under PDS, even within the brief period that they were in charge, to compare to what we have right now or what used to be the case. But we have not seen anything to that effect. And that, you see, today we are talking about transmission issues, and everybody seems to have forgotten that there is a bigger problem at the distribution end. And government has not shown any commitment to going back to ensuring that problems are fixed. Dr. Donkor mentioned capital injection. In 2014, we estimated that we needed about $500 million capital injection into the distribution sector to make it more robust. And I think today the valuation would be somewhere around 1 billion, 1.5 billion that we need to inject into the distribution end. So government, of course, doesn't have that much. So we have to just go back to the private sector participation project, which we were supposed to do under PDS, and ensure that all the actors who are supposed to make this happen, make it happen in a very transparent way, not like what happened with the PDS. So, I mean, coming back to your question, I have not cited any document that has shown how much PDS was able to collect and within the period, and how that matches against. We only hear numbers being thrown about, but we don't have any concrete evidence on it.
And also his concerns on ESLA and what it was supposed to be used for, and the very, one would say, freestyle manner in which its funds are dispensed, but not towards the purpose to which it was set up. Perhaps we should also be then looking at a far more stringent operation of ESLA?
I mean, the ESLA came to pay off legacy debts, and we are still paying the levy to date. And ESLA will not go away, because whilst we are paying off the old debts, we have debts continuing growing. Debt accumulation has not stopped. The ESLA money is part of government earmark funds, and the fiscal recalibration, some act allows the Minister of Finance to be able to cap it at some point to allow money to move into other forms of expenditure. Maybe we begin to question that discretion of the minister, especially when we have very strong financial problems in the power sector, that you would expect that the ESLA would help to defray part. But like I was saying, ESLA is not a silver bullet to the problems that we are facing. We have to stop the debt accumulation in the sector. If we are not able to stop the debt accumulation, it's just like opening a tap into a sieve. Right?
But Yaoche, that is also nigh on impossible, isn't it? One would say it's not even a realistic target to set. This...
No, but my brothers, you see, I guess the reasons why ESLA will never end, and like toll recovery debts will never end, is because the moment you give the opportunity to the politician to introduce some sinking fund, please be ready that there'll be a lot of sinking debt. But what it means is that at the end of the day, they will have to find ways and means of creating the debt in order to make sure that the fund is perpetual.
That's a very cynical view to have, Franklin.
No, but which of the funds have you really found out that were set up and then all of a sudden they were disbanded? Which one? If you can tell me, then you have your answer.
I mean, I share Franklin's sentiment that even for the excess capacity levy that we are supposed to pay, I doubt we will have a sunset on that payment. It would appear that we are going to pay it till thy kingdom come, because the real issues in the sector. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, the real issues in the sector that we have to fix. Nobody is interested in fixing. We are only looking forward to putting a plaster on our ailing wound, short-term fixes. So let's put a levy here and collect these monies for this purpose. Let's do this. Let's go and get this debt to do it. But how about sitting down and say, right, our power system has challenge. Initially, the problem started from the generation end, and we seem to have a hang on it right now. There is some stability in fuel supply as well. Now we have moved to transmission and distribution problems. Let's sit down and say that these are the challenges that we have. These are the measures that we need to take. But I mean, to be fair, these things that I'm proposing are currently ongoing. But what happens is that once it's a donor that says that, oh, Ghana, you need to fix your power system, they will put a very beautiful document to satisfy the donor. But in the end, there is no commitment to actually seeing some of these issues through. If you watch the government's own energy sector recovery program, the report, they indicated that even up to 2022, from our domestic sources and gas from Nigeria, we should be able to, we will even have excess gas supply. But what do we see? This year, government is planning to bring in LNG. What we should be doing, but commitment to resolving the challenges that we have. So we'll keep going around, like Franklin said, in a merry-go-round, and the problems will never get solved because politicians are just not interested.
Interesting. I let me just take a couple of messages, then I will just take final words from my panelists. Dr. Donkor, you want to say something?
Yes.
Okay, go on.
I have to run. Let me quickly say this. When the PDS, there's a difference between the PDS. The government of Ghana, through the Ministry of Finance, guaranteed PDS that the quarterly tariff adjustment will take place. If it didn't take place, government will make good the funds that will have flowed out of that. That is so critical. Currently, ECG does not have that. So government decides when adjustment can take place and when it cannot take place. With the PDC arrangement, there was an imposition on government to do that. So that is one critical area. I believe the Ghanaian state so far has proved incapable on its own of fixing the energy problems. I will not be against a public-private arrangement where there is transparency, where the goalposts are set. But there is a bigger problem. The bigger problem is the macroeconomy. Look, people say they are unable to pay because the economy has its own challenges. Mm-hmm. So the macroeconomy also impacts negatively. As I stated earlier, exchange rate impacts so negatively on the power sector because their payables are dollar denominated, other than salaries and a few other things. And so we really need to sit down as a nation. Let's look at these issues. Let the government take the lead, set up a committee or a team, put a team together from across board. let's look at it and let's commit to implementing whatever decision the team comes up. We're good at finding solutions. We are very good at putting plaster over things, but we are extremely bad at implementing and also showing the necessary political willpower to fix a problem.
I'm happy you are talking about solutions, and since you are, in the final minutes of your submission, you talk about, well, let's put together a committee, let's do this. For the ordinary, for the Ghanaian whose power at the moment is Presso and Dumso, their question is, what does a meeting of a committee do for me?
Okay, if we are talking about the ordinary Ghanaian, let me say this. Last year, when the government came out to say they were going to give free electricity and others, I came out boldly and told government that it was wrong, that the government could take away the levies and taxes on our electricity, but the energy charge should be paid. Mm-hmm. The public applauded the government, and we went around free. Today it's caught up with us. So the public is also blamable.
How are we blamable? If you say you will give me energy and water and I say thank you, how is it my fault?
If somebody says he will give you energy and water free, and another person says, look, this thing is not sustainable, it's not doable. So please, let's do the right thing. The right thing is for government wanting to ameliorate the hardship of the people because of pandemic. Remove your levies and your taxes from our bills. Let's pay the energy charge. Did we? Spearheaded by the media, we went on a praising gallop. Today we are caught up with the reality.
All right, then. Thank you, Dr. Kwabena Donkor. Let me just take a couple of messages, then we'll take a final break. This one is from Paul in Ashali Butri. Says it looks like the government has been misinforming Ghanaians about this excess capacity theory. Dr. Kwabena Donkor has educated us on the need for some backup extra capacity so investors' confidence to establish industries and rural development can be enhanced. Government should be honest to fully utilize our energy capacity for their well-hyped 1D, 1F implementation. This is a message. Simon in Accra sends a very interesting one. It's quite long, but I'll read it. It says, Mr. Boafo, I have spent more than 40 years in power generation. There are 4 main items needed for electricity supply: generator, high voltage transformer at point of transmission pickup, transmission line, and finally low voltage step down load transformer for end user. A good power production system will have extra generator on standby, extra transformers and transmission cables all unused and on standby. If any of the standbys are missing, you are asking for trouble. Go and ask the state of Texas what happened in February this year. If it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It is a Dumso duck. Xylix Dwayne in London says, we Ghanaians are hypocrites. Why are we quiet this time around Dumso? It's egregious. This is what he is saying. Okay. Kwabena from Kofodia says, Jonathan Wakoba is giving the same reasons NDC gave during their time, but they were told to fix the problem. NPP should therefore fix the problem and stop giving us reasons. Because they wanted to win power, they gave freebies, and after winning power, they are asking us to pay. The end always justifies the means. Kwachi Adams from UEW in Ejuma says, in fact, we are disappointed in the energy minister. He has clearly shown that, Kwachi Adams, okay. Michael Fifi Hassan from Goma West greeting Mr. Alexander Aban, who has left the studio at this point. So keep your messages coming in as we look to wrap up this conversation. 0549986996, 0550585832, 0549986996, and 0550585832. When we return, Yao Che and Franklin will wrap up the conversation on the energy sector. Welcome back as we enter the final hurdle of the big issue today. And let me just come to you. So we've done a lot of trying to figure out what the problem is, what we need to figure out as a people. But I guess then I come to your expertise as somebody who works in the energy sector. What would be the ideal path to a solution? Because we know that there isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of solution where this is concerned. So what is the ideal path if you were to outline a path to fixing this problem that we have?
Yeah, because we have outlined here that much of the problem is financial, I would expect that, first of all, it begin to have a conversation about cost-reflective tariffs that are realistic enough, and also find a balance between realistic tariffs and burden on the consumer, because we are recovering from COVID. So if we are going to impose tariffs later this year, then we should have to find a balance, but not to say that government is going to fully subsidize the power that people consume. Then we move to the PSP process, the private sector participation process, to ensure the financial and project turnaround of ECG that we abandoned in 2019. We have to go back to that process, because that process will allow us to get private investments into fixing the issues, the inefficiencies in the distribution sector. Then we can get enough money to pay everyone along the value chain. Then you will not be getting government having to go borrow or find money from some other source to come and inject into fixing the financial issues in the power sector. Because right now, if you get a private entity to come and manage ECG and invest, we should be expecting some $1.5 million investment, and government that money, right? So we need to go back to that process, because that is where the power sector is hemorrhaging heavily. The losses, the commercial losses from illegal connection, ECG's own inability to collect what it's supposed to consumers, and weak transmission infrastructure as well. We need to go back to that process and ensure that there is private capital injection into the power sector. And then we would see that the cash waterfall mechanism, for example, will begin to work effectively. Because right now, what it just does is that it just collects and distributes into the system.
So for you, a cost-reflective tariff, I'm sure that must come with some education, because people must understand why they are paying these things.
Yeah, sure. People must understand. And I think Ghanaians also know that they are really not paying what they should be paying for the power.
Yeah, are you sure we know?
There is some appreciation of that. Even those who connect illegally know that they should be paying for power, but they still go ahead to connect illegally. So there is that appreciation, but I agree with you that there needs to be deepened education on why we should be paying this. And I only pray that government doesn't chicken out when the time is due on making this a reality.
Okay, so cost-reflective tariffs, private sector participation are the two that you are looking at. Franklin, let me finish with you.
Yeah, someday. But look, at the end of the day, let's just know that there cannot be free lunch. You see, a government that promises to give you freebies is large enough to take away from what you have first. Because if it doesn't do that, there's no way they are likely, or they'll continue to pay the freebies. So I think now there must be clear education that, look, whatever you get as free, down the line, you pay back anyway, and that your funeral has just been postponed for a while. While on this, I think the government should also ensure that the MDEs that on whose behalf they owe this debt, a certain percentage of the allocations to the MDEs must be set aside to start recovering the debt, because it's just not fair. Otherwise, they have to be made to run on their own independent electricity that they must generate. I think we are getting to that place where we need to start asking our MDAs to show us why they need to continue to be in business. But the government cannot continue, picking up the debt all the time. But the ordinary consumer cannot continue doing that. Then, of course, I suspect the issues about capital injection have been mentioned. But indeed, there must be every effort done to reduce transmission and commercial losses. I'm told it's about 24%. Even if we manage to pitch it down to about 10%, we'll be doing some good. But we should go back and pursue aggressive private sector participation. Electricity is not. You see, people tend to think that electricity is a right. It's not a right. Just like water is not. If water were a right, you can go and fetch the free water flowing in the river and drink. But as long as someone needs to invest in it, process it, make sure it's clean before you drink, you've got to pay something for it. But the same with electricity. As long as someone needs to generate and then transmit, we need to pay for it. But as long as the government is the one in the middle that decides that they want to do free things, then we may have to find a way of kicking out the government in the middle and then decide to bring in the private sector.
All right, then thank you very much, Franklin Cudjoe, for your thoughts. Let me just take a couple of messages and then we will wrap up the program. So Simon again says, they have been collecting street lights surcharge. If we don't have the lights, why can't they use it for a buffer? Okay, that is an interesting thoughts coming in from Simon. Let me just go on Twitter quickly and get a few more of the messages that have been shared on this particular topic. So Sawari Jacob from Laura says, the same boiling water that softens the potatoes also hardens the eggs. It is now time for justification, so MPP should display it quick. What Ghanaians want is stable power supply, not big grammar. And this one is also Sally Godfred responding to a tweet on the program says, one thing, Dumsor is with us. Yeah, we are talking about it returning. Kronum in Kumasi has had lights off every week since last week. What will the minister call that, please? Nyigbla Anwa not very happy with the former Gomora West Member of Parliament. He says he's not surprised he lost his election. People campaigned and voted for you to represent their interest, and then you come and say they are not the only ones who put you there, who got you there in the first place. And Sawari again says there's no need to have changes in the leadership of the NDC. They should work on their differences and push forward as a team. All right, then thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Big Issue. My name is Godfred Akoto Boafo. It's Easter, so have a happy Easter. Stay safe. Don't go out there if you don't have to go out. Avoid crowded places and still observe all COVID protocols. Yes, they are in place. We don't want to have another wave. See you next week.